Welcome to a space where caregivers are truly seen and heard, where together we explore caregiving as not just a role or a series of tasks, but as a profound emotional experience. Hi, I'm Laura Wayman, the Dementia Whisperer.
I'm Jocelyn Ives, certified life coach in dementia and emotional awareness for caregivers. Together, we shine a light on the real emotional journey of the caregiver, the guilt, the grief, the frustration, fear and worry, and the exhaustion. And here we celebrate and honor the strength and courage and hope and the small moments of joy and connection that carry you through the journey.
This space is where dementia awareness becomes emotional empowerment, and where your story, your feelings, and your resilience matter. Welcome, everyone. And today we have a very, very special guest. He is just someone I adore and someone I have watched so bravely and consistently worked through quite an emotional and really physical journey caring for his parents. Now, I'm going to introduce him in just a minute, but I want you to know that Joe is very, very dementia aware. We have worked together and learned dementia awareness. We have worked together and shared dementia awareness with our staff and with other families. And so the dementia aware piece, that learning about what dementia really is and understanding that, Joe is way ahead of the curve here. However, what he has experienced, especially in the past few months, has been the challenge because the world is not dementia aware, especially the world where he was trying to find help and emotional support in his journey caring for both of his parents. So I want to introduce Joe Dunham. I want him to share with you the struggle and the joy and the pain and the love and just this all of the strength that it's taken to get through his journey with his parents. So hi, Joe. We're so
Hi,
lucky to
Joe.
have you.
Hi, Laura. Hi, Jocelyn. I'm so glad to be here. So happy I could join your blog today.
Here too, Joe. We're so happy.
Yes.
Thank you.
I've been out of touch for a while because my journey did take a turn that was not a good turn and wasn't expecting it. So my being here today hopefully will shed some light for others who are going through the same things that I've been through for the last about a year now. And so I'm always happy to help where I can. And so Laura and Jocelyn invited me to be on the show today, and I want to help where I can.
Good. And absolutely, we know you will. And so I think that wherever you would start in the beginning and maybe even your frustration about how you, because you're dementia aware, because you understand real dementia symptoms, because you know beyond that myth that it's all about memory loss. Where did you want to talk about your mom today? You want to talk about your dad? You want to talk about the most recent journey with your dad? Where would you like to start? Because you have so much information. We can have you back for part 2. So whatever you want to do.
There might need to be a part 2 at some point, but mostly my dad, because there's so much that happened in a short amount of time. There's so many pieces of it that I experienced, that my family experienced, my dad experienced, and it was pretty intense in that as much experience as I thought I had about being dementia aware and how to help others with their journey, it catches you a little bit off guard, even with with my experience.
Yeah.
Even because there were many days when I was thinking, okay, come on, Joe, I can do this. I've got lots of experience. I can help others all the time, and so this can't be a big deal. And so, yeah, um, my mom is still with us. She's in assisted living. My dad has passed away. He passed away in February, and it was a rough several months of dealing with so many different aspects of it.
So, Joe, when you first started seeing your dad struggling, tell us what you were seeing and how you were feeling.
Well, when everything started to take that turn, when I realized, okay, we've got a little bit more to deal with than what I initially thought, because if it was just working with dementia, I was like, yes, I'm ready for this. We can do this, because that was one of the things that came across our plates in a short amount of time. And so in the beginning, we had medical conditions going on. My dad had COPD. He had oh man, he had lots of problems with clogged arteries, including both of his carotid arteries, which were contributing to a lack of oxygen to the brain. And so, like I said in the beginning, it was rough because I wasn't really sure exactly what was going on. If there was dementia, if it was the lack of oxygen to the brain that was just causing some confusion here and there, because as any of us know who have been living that or going down that journey, there's several different causes of dementia symptoms. And
Right.
so you get to a point where sometimes I was like, well, wait a minute. No, no, it's not that, it's this. And then the very next day, I was like, no, it's not that, it's this. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, there was a lot of it going on that was, even for me, thinking I've got this, it was confusing and jumbled. And there's so many different parts of it with the medical world that, looking back, I can honestly tell you many times they made it a lot worse for me and my dad and my family than what it should have been.
And how did they make you feel when they weren't really listening to you?
Well, that's funny that you asked that question, because it wasn't just that they weren't really listening. It was that they were giving advice and telling me things that sometimes I was pretty sure were not accurate.
Yeah.
And sometimes I was pretty sure, no, that you don't know what you're talking about, and you're focusing on the wrong things. And so it was a mixture of feelings of, one minute I was angry, and the next minute I was like just frustrated. And there was so many different medical experts that weren't giving accurate information. And that just contributed to the frustration and anxiety that I was already having to the
Right.
situation. It just made it that much worse.
Right. And the medical professionals, we look at them as an authority figure in this area. So when they were giving you this information and you're questioning some of it, what we often do is then we question ourselves, right? We're like, no, I'm sure it's me that's wrong because I just don't know. And then we feel even more confused. And I really want to touch on what you said, that you've worked in this area of expertise. You know a lot about dementia. You've worked in the healthcare industry, and yet at times you were kind of telling yourself, I should know this. This is, how do I not know what's going on? How do I not know the answer here, right? And we do that to ourselves. And even when I'm working with clients and I'm giving them tools to help them with their emotions and their thoughts and their feelings, they will often come to me and say, okay, well, I did it all wrong and I know better. And they judge themselves. And I just want to tell you that that makes it so much harder when we judge ourselves. So whenever I catch myself with that sentence in my head, like, I knew better, I should have done better, I really try to shut that down, because there's just no upside to it. And we do that as we learn things. So then we have whatever original emotion was there with a whole big fat dollop of judgment on top, which makes it so much worse. So I love that you
Exactly.
brought that up. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is the emotional part you're going through. You're so um, I don't know, you're so at a loss
Yeah.
because you're trying to deal with several different things all at the same time, and so you reach a point where not only you're physically exhausted, but emotionally and mentally as well. And so you get to a point sometimes where you're like, you might not even hear the words that they're telling you, hearing it, but it's like what was, and trying to take it all in and sort through it and make sense of it is, I mean, and I always thought I'm a pretty strong person. I can do this because this is what I've done for 20 years. And then I did several times felt like I was underwater or in a cloud where I'm just sitting there listening to their words and thinking, wait a minute, wait a minute, no, that doesn't
I'm
make
not
sense.
hearing you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
there was several moments like that.
And Joe,
And
don't you think that's a perfect example of even us as professionals need the kind of support that Jocelyn gives? Because like you and I, we say this to ourselves. I know this stuff, and even to a point where we're, a doctor's telling a family, well, it's this, and this, and we're going, no, it's not that, and that. It's about helping that family member, helping that professional, know that every single person is different and we have to remain fluid and flexible. We can bring our knowledge and what we've experienced in the past, but we have to have that almost an open heart to learn how to deal with each situation as it comes up, right?
Right,
And it's hard when you're that person in that emotional space to back off and say, "Hey, I need to look at this a little differently." Right?
right.
it's very
Yeah,
hard because you're very emotionally tied to it. So, like you said, you're trying to sort through facts and figures that they're giving you, and yet you're trying to deal with all these emotions. Meanwhile, trying to care for this person and keep them safe while this is all going on. So, it just, I think it is part of this journey, especially in the beginning, all that confusion. But I want to tell you that every time we think the thought, I don't know what to do, it just feels true, right? Feels so true.
right.
But
Yeah,
it's just a lie. And our brain loves to offer us that sentence because think about it, when someone asks you a question, you're like, I don't know what to do. Then you kind of stop thinking about it for a minute, right? It's almost like you threw up your hands and you don't have to focus on it for a little while because you don't know what to do. And your brain loves that. One of your brain's jobs is to try and conserve energy. And so we hear ourselves throughout the day. I do it to myself. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do about that yet. And I kind of get to stop thinking about it for a minute.
yeah,
But the truth is, and this is true for all you caregivers, you know your loved one best, not the medical professional, not the, staff at assisted living. You know them best. So all you're doing right now is gathering information. You're just gathering all the information you can, but you are allowed to believe that you will know exactly what to do once you gather this information. And ironically enough, choosing to believe that literally opens your brain up to all different creative options, all different solutions. And it's true. You know this person better than anyone.
And you're dementia aware. So even though it felt uncomfortable, you had the answers. You did, even though it was difficult at the time. So, we can move on, but I wanted to stop and really think about right now. Okay, so Joe is feeling like, you guys, the medical profession, you don't know what you're talking about. I've seen this 100 times. I've worked with families. I know this. And your brain was correct. It was right. But
It
it
was.
wasn't helpful that they weren't hearing that. So, do they need to be dementia aware? Absolutely. Can you imagine how much easier it would have been if you were working with medical professionals who would have said, everybody's different. This is what we're seeing. Tell me more about what you're seeing, and together we can work on it. Instead of saying, well, it's probably this, when possibly wasn't, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
there was a big part of that between the the pulmonologist that we were seeing, as well as the neurologist. And of course, you can't get them both in the same room at the same time and say, "Wait a
Ever.
minute, okay, listen to what the two of you are saying, and tell me this,
Yes.
tell me this makes sense." So yeah, there were several times where it would have been helpful
Yeah.
if they were more open and listening to what I was trying to tell them, because I wasn't always explaining it exactly right because of
Sure.
the emotional aspect of it. And I'm trying to keep everything straight and try and keep the communication with them on a level where we could understand each other.
Right.
And it didn't always work that way. And so
Right.
I would have a conversation with the pulmonary doctor and say, well, this and this and this, and he was like, sometimes he's like, oh yeah, you might be right, but but I think maybe this. And there was there was just so much of it that was just left open. And like you were saying, Jocelyn, I got to a point where I was like, okay, let's take this on the next day. Let's
Yes.
let this
Yes.
rest, let this
Yes.
go for a minute, and
Yes.
start over again tomorrow.
Which, and there's nothing wrong with doing that, Joe, at all. I mean, we need to take, sometimes we need to walk away, right? And we need to stop. So you're not doing it wrong, but I do want you to remember that you do know. And sometimes in my head, it sounds like I don't know, but I will.
Yeah.
I will know what to do. And you're saying the doctors sometimes they sounded like or felt like they weren't listening to you or they weren't open. And definitely, I mean, we've all experienced that with the doctor. But I do see sometimes that families will come in and they're not listening to the doctor. They want to tell their story, which of course they do, but it works both ways, right? So be willing to be wrong and listen to what they have to say. But ultimately, just remember, you get to decide. So when someone maybe says something that you're like, I'm not sure, then tell me more. Like, I want to know everything about what you think. And I still might decide that I think what I'm thinking is right, but tell me everything. So again, just look at it as like I'm gathering all the information I can, and I will know what to do.
And I
Yeah.
like to remember that the medical profession knows the mechanics and the clinical side that I don't know, but they don't know the emotional and social side that I know and that you know. And so that's the part. And working together, we learned a lot about the physical clinical side too. But our job is to help that synergy with families, with ourselves, that synergy of learning to support both of those sides. And it's difficult because the clinician side is so black and white, and our side is so gray and many colored, right? And
Yes,
so many different facets. And so, um, you know, that's going to bring about more frustration and confusion because it's so much more helpful when we're working with the medical side that has that open door kind of policy for the dementia awareness and the emotional awareness. So it used to be called and Joe, us oldsters, we used to be called bedside manner. And
yeah,
there's not bedside manner when it comes to dementia, which there absolutely has to be more bedside manner because what we're talking about, what the only thing you had left with your dad when he started showing these dementia symptoms from all these different causes, he was losing that executive brain function and the ability to communicate the same way, is you have to talk to his feelings. But you're going to be so much better as a caregiver when you're talking to your own feelings clearly, when there's that concise understanding of how you're feeling and that it's okay, right? Then you
Right.
understand theirs so much better. So, yeah.
Yeah. There was several times when I had to really stop and regroup,
Right.
Because you've got the medical team and all the caregivers, whether it's the hospital, skilled nursing, or whatever, and then you've got your own family who, and I have to, I have to, well, I had to during that time, I had to stop and realize, okay, yeah, I've got 20 years experience. And so I'm going to be more on top of it than pretty much anybody else in my circle. And
Sure.
so, as much as some people tried to understand and tried to, offer the help and suggestions, whatever it was, it would cause me shortness of breath sometimes. I'm like, wait a minute. and and so giving all of those people that I just kind of mentioned a little bit of credit, because I had to literally stop and think, okay, this doctor that I'm dealing with right now, whether it was the hospital doctor, or the neurologist, whoever,
Yeah.
okay, they're trying to take care of 20, 30, 50 people in a day. And they're going from one bed to the next, or one whatever to the next, one patient to the next, one phone call to the next. And
Right.
so I've got just me. I got just me and my dad,
Mhm.
but yet we still can't really make it work as hard as I tried. And sometimes I felt they were trying, but most of the time I felt they weren't really trying because they had so much on their plate as well. So
Right,
it
right.
got very jumbled often.
Yes, your interactions with them, you mean, and the messaging and all that between.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, and that makes sense. And part of this journey too is you're gonna feel confused. Like, and that's okay. I don't want you to judge yourself for that, or it's just kind of like accepting a big part of this in the beginning is going to be confusion. So that's okay. I'll just feel confused while I gather all this information. I can be confused. I've been confused before. And at the end, I have figured it out, which is what you did, Joe, right?
Yes.
Day to
And
day.
yeah,
Yeah.
one day at a time.
Yes.
But
Yes.
it was constant. It was pretty much 24/7.
Yeah.
Um, no matter if I was trying to sleep at night, of course, I'm still waking up several times during the night.
Right.
Go, wait a minute, did he say blah, blah, blah? Or did she say blah, blah, blah?
Yes.
And okay, so I'm going to have to make sure I address that as well, because
Right.
that's not the case. Or did
Right.
they say blah, blah, blah? And now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. And that could
Yes.
be part of it. So it was such, I don't know. When I look back now, it
Mhm.
really was turmoil. It was chaos and turmoil a lot of times.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so people who don't have a 20-year history of taking care of those suffering from dementia symptoms, I can't imagine what it's like for them to.
If if you had to do it again, that initial beginning part where you were kind of in this discovering what is going on phase, is there anything you would do differently? Like, would you record your interactions with the doctor so you could go back and replay them? Or is there anything that you have now thought of, like, ah, you know what would have been great if I did?
Well, let's see. Probably several things that I
Okay,
might have done a little bit differently. And since you mentioned the recordings, towards the end, I was recording the phone conversations
that's
that I was
smart.
having,
Yeah,
because there was many times when I would go back thinking about the conversation I had that I didn't have recorded. And so
right.
towards the end, there was a couple times where I was like, I want to be
Yeah.
able to replay this and make sure I didn't miss anything, because I was, and this is a side note, I
Okay.
was constantly trying to keep on top of all of my dad's household items, the
Yes.
landscapers, the paying the
Right.
bills, uh,
Right.
getting the car registration. There's all of that part of it that was going on at the same time. And
Right.
You were
so,
having to think for him.
yes,
Yes.
Yes.
exactly. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it would have been helpful if I had that. It probably would have been helpful if I had a sibling or somebody else who felt like they could handle it as well. But
Sure.
that was something that just wasn't there. And for most people, it probably isn't.
Yeah.
And my wife is working full time. And so she
Right.
was there as much as she could be. And several times she said, I don't know how you're doing this. Because she would hear she works out of our home, and she would hear my conversations. And at the end of the conversation, she'd be like, I don't know how you're doing this. I don't know how anybody could do this.
How did you do it, Joe? How did you do it? When you look back, how did you
I
do it?
I wish I could say I was terribly organized, but I wasn't. There was days when I felt like things were falling apart right and left.
Yeah,
And trying to keep doctor's appointments, you know, not only scheduled and rescheduled, and no, we can't make it today because we're not having a good day and it's
right,
just not going to happen. And
right.
so I just took, really, there was days where I just took one moment at a time,
Perfect. That's
because that's
perfect.
you get to a point where that's really
Yes.
literally all you can do.
Absolutely. And that's kind of all any of us have, right? Is one moment to the next. But that was beautifully put because you're exactly right. When things start to feel overwhelming and like you're juggling a million balls, then that means we need to shorten our lens length. Like we bring it in, what do I need to do in the next hour? That's all
Right.
I need to figure out right now. And then what do I need to do by the end of the day? Because we start spiraling out, and just like you said, it just feels like chaos. So we
Yeah,
just shorten it in and take it moment to moment, hour to hour. That was beautiful. And you did do it. That's what I want to point out. It felt
I
like
did.
chaos, and you managed chaos. Like, nice job.
And and isn't life just messy anyway? I mean, life is just messy. And then you throw dementia symptoms in there. And, just kind of broadening our lens about dementia awareness, because right now we're talking about all those things that you had to handle, the landscaper and this and that your dad could no longer do because his dementia symptoms, he was experiencing loss of executive function with all of this. It wasn't that he forgot your name. That doesn't have anything to do with dementia symptoms. It's about all these tasks that he was doing and managing and taking part in all throughout his adult life that was on autopilot for him, that all of a sudden you had to take all of that over. And that's what's so hard for that caregiver to realize, because most caregivers don't have any idea before this happens what actual dementia symptoms they are going to be dealing with. And
Right.
Exactly.
so, when they came to us as professionals and we could hear that, and they'd say, well, they must not have dementia because they can remember our name. Well, they could no longer take part in a conversation. They couldn't follow a recipe. They couldn't get their pajamas on or know when to change their clothes, or those kinds of tasks that often go unrecognized as this loss of executive function, which all of a sudden it kind of slaps that caregiver in the face. No, this is really what you're going to be dealing with. So let us help you with not just how to manage all of that, and to realize that you're not going to stop it, fix it, or change it, because that will make it worse, but to accept it and know that we're going to help you and that you can do it, and then get that helpful change in your perception about how you're thinking about it. And so that's what's going to give you that strength, that resilience. And so that's why I'm so excited that you're sharing this story, because this is what really goes on. This is real stuff. And you made it through, Joe. You made it through. Well, you're still working on some things, and we can talk about that too, but look at how far you've come. And in that, we can really say to the medical profession, we can help you do this a little better. We can help the rest of your family, feel good about learning this. And every caregiver who's listening today, they can, once again, I want them to have an open heart and understand that we can help you make it through this, and that there is these small moments of joy and resiliency that will help carry you through. So we've gotten to this point right now. Let's kind of move on a little bit. So you're hearing all this stuff, but your dad continues to have some dementia symptoms that are really challenging, like loss of balance and coordination. So he's falling. And can you stop that, Joe? No. What? So tell us how you were managing that.
Well, there's just like every aspect of dementia care, there's
Mhm.
so much at any given point that you're trying to juggle, that you're trying to keep intact. And even to the point I was going to say earlier, to the point of you're in it, you're in the middle of it, and you're trying to make sense of it. You're trying to keep dad from falling. You're trying to understand why he told you he's been in the basement for 3 days with nobody taking care of him. You're trying to put it all together, and you're so in the middle of it that it's extremely challenging for somebody who thought, piece of cake, I can do this.
Yeah.
And then while you're sitting there and all of this is going on, I got slapped in the face several times throughout every day.
I really, not good. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how I managed it, again, pretty much back to moment by moment, but
Yeah.
there were times when, oh, I don't know, I could give you example after example, but here I am in the assisted living at one time with
Okay.
my dad, and he was asleep in his recliner. It
Yeah.
was dinner time. He hadn't eaten lunch. I really wanted to get him to the dining room so that we could get some food in him. And he just would not wake up. In fact, I almost sent him out because he was almost non-responsive. And so I went to the dining room. My mom was there waiting. They both were staying in the same assisted living in different rooms. And my mom was waiting in the dining room for
Mhm.
him because she would only go if he was going. And
Okay.
so I was trying to get him there. I leave his room because he's out. And I went to tell my mom, we're working on it, and to get a caregiver to come and help me. Well, I wasn't gone 2 minutes, and he woke up, went to get
Oh,
out of the recliner, down he went, cracked his head open.
oh,
Out he goes 911, just like that. And
just like that.
so there was many occasions like that where I felt like I had to be in three different places at the same time,
Yeah.
and trying to keep on top of it, trying to tell the caregiver, no, don't put his shoes on. No, don't, don't try and give him the medication because he obviously can't swallow right now. And so
Right.
it just like all over the place. And
Oh
so
my gosh, I can only
Oh,
imagine how
I
that
can.
felt, Joe.
it
Oh my
was,
gosh. I
it's,
hope you had moments where you had some compassion for yourself. Like when you
one,
were like, oh my gosh, look at me go.
I don't know if compassion ever entered the equation at all. I can tell you I started because I live in Roseville and they lived in Vacaville. I started taking the train back and forth because
Okay.
the traffic on top of everything else was just making me even more crazy. So
That's
at
good.
least when I got on that train, it was a moment of peace, a moment of I didn't have to worry about anything else. I could just sit
Yes.
there, reflect, and regroup.
I love that you did that. And that brings up a really good point is that when you're in the midst of it, like you said, you need to be three places at once and it's all coming at you. And we often feel like, I can't find any time for myself. I can't take a break. It just, I don't have any time to myself. And it feels like we give the credit to our loved one who has dementia and the doctors that are calling and all the things that are happening around us. It's their fault that I don't have any time, right? But at the end of the day, it is our job to take care of ourselves. So think outside the box, right? And just that's exactly what you did. You said, you know what? I do need a minute and there's no reason I have to drive. I could take the train. You took responsibility, you took ownership of taking care of yourself so you could care for your dad and your mom. And that was beautifully done. And sometimes we just get in our habits and our ways and we're like, well, no, I have to drive or I have to make dinner or I have to do this. And it's like zoom out a little bit and look for ways that you can change a few things and get yourself whatever you need. And it kind of sounds like in your head, like, what am I needing and how
Right.
am I going to get it?
Well, and I'd like to go down this one path for just a second
Okay.
because I want people to know it goes above and beyond just what the three of us are discussing today because
Mhm.
what I just mentioned about I would get on the train and go. Well, I didn't feel like I could get on the train and go because they both needed a lot of care that assisted living staff could not handle.
Yeah.
And so, luckily, my parents had the resources that I was able to hire a private caregiver to come into the assisted living
Excellent. Yeah.
because it was obvious. And me managing assisted living, I already knew this
Yeah.
that it's a difficult situation
Mhm.
when there's any sort of dementia, mild cognitive impairment, even.
Right.
It's the staff there. They are just not staffed. And then you guys know the story too. The staff who are there, many of them aren't qualified. Many of them just want to get their paycheck. Many of them want to say, "Here's your socks, put them on, and I'm going to turn around and leave." And so the help is not there. It's just not there. And so had my parents not had those resources available to them for me to be able to hire extra care to come in, it would have been
Right.
10 times worse. Because it was bad, but it would have been 10 times worse. And most people don't have that. Most people don't have that at their fingertips. And so
And a perfect example of why professionals need to be dementia aware and why family members need to be dementia aware. You know, when you and I were working together, we figured that out. When a family would come to us, we were not only training our staff in dementia awareness, we insisted that the family, when they would sign the admission papers, that they would have an hour with us to get them dementia aware as well, so that they could change their expectations about what we could and could not provide, even though we were working to provide the very best we could in the moment, we still needed their help, right?
and that was even more challenging because you're dealing with family members who really know nothing
Right.
about senior care, about medical conditions, about the dementia piece of all of it. And so, Laura, you and I both sat there how many times and looked in their eyes, and you could tell they couldn't absorb it. It was too
Right.
much.
It
It was
was just too emotional. Absolutely. And yet we still had so much success coming from this in a very different way and helping them to change their expectations. You know, we had a gentleman who absolutely, we could not get him to shower. He just would not do it. He resisted it. Now, he had a little younger wife and she was still working. And so when she brought him to us, just like Jocelyn's saying, she knew him better than we did. So she had brought him to us, and most other challenges with him, we were figuring out. We were training our staff and working together and customizing our care, but we could not figure out that shower. And so she came in to me and she said, the wife came in to me and she said, you know, I don't think you guys are showering him. And he's kind of smelly and we need to get that done. And so I said, you know, it's such a challenge. We've done all of our usual go-to kinds of things, and we've really just come to the end of our rope. We're really challenged. He's just refusing that. And she kind of looked at me and she said, well, I didn't have any trouble with that. And I said, well, how'd you do it? And so she said, well, I would just take off all my clothes and get in the shower and go, come here. And I said, well, we can't do that. And so I thought, well, wait a minute. We
yeah.
can use her wisdom. And so I said to her, you know, if you could come twice a week and just help us with the shower, it however that works for you, we would really appreciate it, and we'll take your shower charges off
Of
because
course.
you're going to come do that for us. You can put a do not disturb sign. And you know, it was really talking to her feelings too, because what she said to me is, I would love that because I kind of miss intimacy and cuddling with him, and I could do that. And I said, absolutely, we support it 100%. So, you know, it's those kinds of things that is that emotional support, that helped her to feel that love and security that we were trying to give him that we couldn't, and she could join in and build our village. And so just like you're saying, Joe, we need to change that perception and those expectations. And how do we do that? By utilizing this information that we're talking about today. We can help professionals feel more empowered, both have that more emotional stability and a great foundation, and these tips and techniques that with their care approach that's going to make them feel more empowered more often.
Yes,
Yep.
that's beautifully said. And you're right, Joe. When someone has the resources to hire some, whether it's caregivers to give you a break, whether it's delegating household duties out so that you're not trying to manage those as well, that's awesome. And that's wonderful, and we're all for it. But you're right, some people don't have that. They don't have the
Right.
luxury or the ability to hire additional help. And that's when you start asking for help, right? And
Exactly.
people don't want to ask for help. They feel like they're imposing and it's kind of uncomfortable. But the alternative is that you do everything yourself and you're very uncomfortable. And you know what feels awesome? Helping someone. Don't take that away from those people. Ask them. That will actually feel amazing for them to help you. People want to help. So gather up your courage and start asking people, because it really is such an amazing feeling to help someone, and you need some help. It takes a village. This isn't something that you should be able to do by yourself. You shouldn't. You should need
Well,
help.
one of the things that I learned throughout all of this is sometimes it's not a matter of whether or not you want to ask for help or feeling
Yeah,
like you're imposing on somebody. It's that you don't know, especially when you're in the thick of it, you don't know
sure.
where to turn. There was VA benefits available to my dad that I had always wanted to throughout this whole time and even prior to
Mhm.
find out about it and what do I need to do because I'm pretty sure he qualifies for it. But
Yeah.
when I got down that road into the thick of it, I
Mhm.
couldn't even there was no way I could address VA benefits.
Yes.
Well, when we reached towards the end and we were getting ready to go on hospice, that's when the ICU people who were actually pretty helpful, but we were at the end. And so anyway, long story short is I contacted VA. Well, turns out my dad didn't turn in the paperwork many years ago that he should have turned in to
Yeah.
help him qualify for certain VA benefits. Well, there's aid and attendance, there's things that are available, but people don't know it. People don't
They
know where
don't.
to turn, they don't know where to start. And
It's so
I
true.
was even one of those.
Yes, and it's so true. But again, when we allow ourselves to believe, even though your brain wants to say, I don't have time for that, I can't do that, when you kind of claw your way sometimes to the belief that I can figure it out, that's when you start getting creative. Like, that college kid that lives across the street, I'm going to pay him for 4 hours of his time to do some research for me and start figuring, right?
Yeah,
Or one of my kids that, I mean, and we start getting really creative when you allow yourself to believe, oh, I can so figure this out. I might not do it myself, but I can think of ways to get help. So you're exactly right. There are resources out there, but it takes time to find them.
right.
Yeah.
And when you're functioning by yourself, which is also the case for a
Yes.
lot of people,
Yes.
it's almost impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the whole purpose, the whole mission of what you and I and Jocelyn are trying to do here is to
Mhm.
take this time and as comfortably as possible talk about these things that are uncomfortable, that you may not think you need to know, but we're telling you right now that you do need to know this. You need to in order to get that I believe in order for us to get to where we need to be with senior care, I believe that dementia awareness like this needs to be a high school class. You know, we,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
yes, we need to be learning this. We need our audience to say, this information would be good for my church congregation. This information would be helpful for the Chamber of Commerce.
Exactly.
This is exactly what we all need to get past that stigma of I don't have dementia and I don't know anybody who has dementia, so I don't need to hear this. Oh, yes, you do. Because not only do we need to be dementia aware because the statistics say you're probably going to be in this somehow, a loved one, a coworker, so it's going to come across your path. It probably already has out in your community. But what we are talking about today goes beyond just dementia care. We're talking about when these challenges, like caring for a loved one with dementia or professionally caring for many, when these challenges come up, the way that we manage our feelings is what we're going to take to the next challenge above and beyond what you're going through right now. And
Yeah.
so that's why this is so important to really sit in it. Yes, yes, this is focusing on this dementia care challenges, which are extreme, but all of this that we're talking about today can be for the other kinds of challenges you might be facing. A relationship with a family member that you're challenged with, or weight loss, or another kind of health crisis. So, this is so exciting that we can share this, and then it's sustainable tools above and beyond.
That is so true. It's your brain goes with you everywhere, right? So when we learn that we are creating the emotions we feel, not the things outside of us, not the dementia or the things our loved ones are saying or our job or our bank account or the number on the scale, but our thoughts about those things, the way we are interpreting those things, causes our healthy brains to release chemicals and hormones, and that becomes a vibration in our body, and we see it as an emotion. And when I think I always knew that intellectually, like if you would have asked me, I would have said, yeah, that sounds right. But I didn't know it in my bones, know it until maybe 10 years ago. But when you start to really understand that, you recognize that the world becomes less scary. Challenges become less scary because when other things outside of us are causing our emotions, we have to wake up every day and hope all the pieces fall in the right spot and people say the right thing so we can have a good day. When you realize that would be great if that happened and it would make it easier for me to feel the way I want to feel, but ultimately I choose what I think and believe and how I feel. And that doesn't mean we won't feel negative emotion, and you will feel negative emotion as you go through this dementia journey. If you care about this person, you will. If you want to do this well, you will feel negative emotion, but you will choose it. And those emotions won't be so scary because when you're tired of feeling that emotion, when you're ready to get motivated and committed and feel love, whatever emotion you want to feel, when you're ready, you can find new believable thoughts that make you feel a much more useful emotion. When you're ready, it's all up to you, and it filters out to every part of your life, right? Once you get good at that, then you can utilize that in any part of your life. And
Right.
so to me, any challenge that you go through, learning to manage your thoughts and emotions is life changing
Right.
to
You
all
know,
parts of your life.
an, another good example of that, Joe, is that your brain was already um, in a spot where you had realistic expectations about what dementia really was.
I could
So you
recognize.
didn't have to get there first.
Yeah.
Right.
So that really helped you to be a better caregiver, even though you were still struggling. So
Exactly.
that's the part of the education that dementia awareness brings, and then it's the how should I feel about this, and if I feel this way, is that okay? That's the part that Jocelyn brings to us to make you that perfect example of that, a gold star caregiver, right?
Thank you for being our example, Joe. You're such
Yes.
But the
Well,
number one thing that makes it harder for caregivers that they do to themselves that make this harder is they judge themselves. And that makes it so much harder to show up for their loved one and for themselves. And the reason we all do that, and the reason we do it is because our brains, our healthy brains, are tasked with keeping us alive. And the way that they do that is they're constantly scanning for trouble. Because if they can recognize a potential problem, then they can come up with a solution and keep us alive. We love our brains for that. It's how we've evolved. It's why we don't still live like cavemen lived. We love our brains for that.
I
But
know.
they are always looking for trouble. And so many times they think there's a problem when there isn't. So we have to be onto our brains and recognize sometimes that's very helpful, but other times we have to let our brains know that's actually not a problem at all. I didn't do that wrong. It doesn't matter if that person doesn't agree with me. Little red flags that our brain throws up at us, we have to be the boss of it and recognize, settle down, brain. There's not a problem here. I'm doing a really good job.
And
Right.
Joe, you are such a good example of that. And I know you and I talked about, your dad has passed, but just that punch in the gut that grief brings us, and how that like I said, I think we need to have part two and talk about all of those feelings that you're dealing with even still today. But we were talking on the phone, and I just admire you so much because you were able to verbalize that. You said this is much harder than I thought it was going to be, and how great that we are learning from the inside out how these how this feels, how this plays out. So
Yeah.
if there was one thing, one sentence, one paragraph that you could tell our listeners about how you wish things could have been different, how something that you would like to give, that little nugget of if this would have been different, it would have made it so much easier. Is there something that you could kind of close out for us, Joe? And we'll have you back. We'll do more because I know the listeners are going to want to know more about your story and how this is all played out, and how your awareness has helped you through it, even though it's still been really challenging. So, what is that one thing you'd like to tell to someone who's in the midst of this, that might help them?
Well, as we've talked about many times over the last 20 years, um, every aspect of dementia care has several different arms or legs or pathways that are attached to it. There's not, I think a lot of people might be of the mindset that once you start down that journey that, okay, I'll stay focused on this and it'll all be okay. And there is not one thing to focus on. And so as we were talking, I was thinking about the average caregiver, whether it be an assisted living, whether it be a private caregiver that comes to the home, the caregiver, it's not really something that you can learn easily about watching all the different things that are going on. And the person that 1 minute is seemingly not even having dementia symptoms. And
Yeah.
the next minute, you're going down this road and you're thinking, where did that come from? And how do I deal with that? Because it oftentimes comes out of the blue. and there's so much going on because that caregiver is focused on meals and laundry and cleaning the room and oh, and now, by the way, we want you to do activities with them too. And so it's overwhelming, like we talked about. But when I look back at the whole situation, what I might have done different, I think I would have probably incorporated family members that maybe either didn't understand or didn't care to understand and thought, oh, it's okay, he's got this, and I don't really need to help. And I think I probably should have done that. But there again, every family is different. You've got family dynamics that you're dealing with, and there isn't always somebody who can help. In fact, there are those who actually step in and make it worse.
It's that human connection that is really, in spite of everything else, it's that human connection, that joining their feelings, because the feelings are what is left, and teaching other family members to do that. We've had some of our other guests talking about that. You know, when you start to practice that, it makes such a huge difference. And that's kind of the key into their world, because it's all about how we make them feel, because they have nothing left. They have no, what we're talking about today is managing our feelings. They just feel them now. And so it's learning to think for them and manage their feelings. And then the other stuff just kind of happens, and we learn to let it happen, right?
I hope you have moments, Joe, where you're just so proud of what you did, because
I think I'm getting there.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yes,
I hope.
yes, absolutely. We want to give you that. I wish I had the gold stars that our teachers used to have, that sheet of gold stars, because Joe, we just put them all over your forehead because you're just doing such a good job. And you're doing such a great service in sharing your challenges and how you felt, because I know a lot of our listeners are going to go, oh yeah, that's how I feel too. And yeah, and what we want to tell all of our listeners is, yes, that's being human. You're going to feel these things. That's okay. And thank you. I like I told Jocelyn, I knew you would be such a great guest, because you are so good at sharing your feelings in such a profound way.
Maybe too much.
So
It was perfect.
we absolutely, I know we will have many that will be asking to have you back, because we learned so much from you. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you so much. This helped. This was a big help. Thank you.
I'm so glad.
Absolutely. We're so glad. Remember that caregiving is not just a responsibility, it's a deeply human experience. And you, every one of you, deserves support and clarity and compassion all along the way. So be sure and join me, Laura Wayman, the Dementia Whisperer.
And me, Jocelyn Ives, certified life coach for dementia caregivers. We are both here to remind you that you're not going through this alone. Your emotions are valid. Whatever you're feeling is exactly what you should be feeling right now. And your resilience is real. I know, and Laura knows, that some days you probably feel like you're sinking. And on better days, you feel like you're barely floating. We are here to teach you to swim.
We wish you calm seas and gentle winds on your dementia care journey. And we want to welcome you back next time and every time as we continue exploring the truth, the tenderness, and the transformation within this caregiving journey.
Thanks for listening. Please like, subscribe, and leave us a review.